My name is LJohnson, and I am here to discuss my personal system of classroom management. I, for one, have a few beliefs about students. I believe that every child can learn. This is not limited to just a formal education, but in any circumstance. Every person can learn to be better each day. I teach a demographic of high school students who deal with many adult issues, and it shows when and if they come to class. However, I believe that with the right motivations and investment, that every student who comes into my classroom can learn and be successful. Now, after having a year off of in-person learning, many students are struggling to get back into the groove of proper classroom behavior. And I'm sure to make expectations and rules very clear and to offer students opportunities to correct themselves. I believe that through building good rapport with students, that they will work diligently, not just to make the teacher proud, but to uphold their own self-pride. Of course, this doesn't always work. And when it doesn't, I take the time to address each individual issue and redirect behaviors. I believe that students should be disciplined, never controlled. Control only leads to students shutting down, and these students are put down enough. They have enough issues. When they come into my classroom, there should be an environment of hope and security. I see my students as equals. They are young adults, and if I want them to be successful in the real world, I must treat them and respect them the way I expect to be treated and respected. Now, I don't believe that having a democratic classroom means letting the students take over the class. However, I believe that students should be given limited options to promote decisiveness. Too many option choices makes it difficult to make one single decision. In addition to my expectations or beliefs about student roles, I also have beliefs about teacher roles. It's my job to encourage, support, and motivate every student that walks into my classroom. As I've already mentioned, these kids get put down enough. It's my job to lift them up as much as possible and to try to make a difference in their lives. When I was growing up, my teachers played such instrumental roles in my life. They were my mentors, my surrogate parents, my counselors. I went to my teachers for everything that I wasn't getting at home. I try to offer that same thing to my students. Not only is it my job to support and build relationships with my students, but it's also my job to present them with the safest environment to learn and develop and to provide well thought out planned lessons that are relevant and understandable. I believe that students should be managed in a way that allows them to grow and develop organically, but also keeps them on track for success. Students should not be in charge of their own consequences, just like they can't decide whether running a stop sign gets them a ticket. It keeps them accountable and it makes them aware. If we make them aware of the consequences, they'll be sure not to uh, do anything to earn those consequences. Now, I identify myself as an authoritative teacher, so I maintain high control in the classroom, but I'm also highly involved with my students and I care. I'm firm, but I'm fair. I'm currently working on incorporating Craig Saganti's classroom management model in my classroom. It's important for me to use an orderly, business-like style of teaching to make it enjoyable for my students, but also make it enjoyable for my students. I believe that this balance of relevance and challenge for students um, is what really works best. Establishing clear rules and it is important to do at the beginning of the year. I dedicate my first 2 weeks of school to be precise. This allows students to get into a rhythm and understand the expectations of the classroom. My students come in, they do their SSR, which is silent sustained reading for 15 minutes. They take 10 minutes to write a quick journal, and then they do their vocabulary. Doing this allows them to get into that routine and know the expectations as soon as they walk into the classroom. In my class, I also have some rules. There's no cursing. We respect one another. We come to class prepared and we communicate effectively. I post the rules and I review them with the students daily for the first week of school, and then again whenever the need arises. We also using Canvas, so it's on my Canvas homepage if ever they forget what the rules are. I have students sign a social contract and promise to follow that where they promise to follow these rules. And I'm a very Glasser-like teacher where I empathize with my students and accept their feedback and find new and better ways to make the class better for them. I understand that not every child is the same and many students come from different circumstances, and I try to be aware of them and offer support wherever I can. Now, my beliefs about classroom management. I do not believe that students should be rewarded for good behavior or for learning. Like Sagante says, don't give superfluous rewards. Students are supposed to behave, they're supposed to learn. That's your job when you come to school. Genuine progress should be the student's own reward. Of course, I believe in affirming students for doing well and behaving the way that they should, but they shouldn't be bribed. I try to keep the class engaged by understanding and using interactive activities like quizzes and Kahoot and classroom scavenger hunts. I also engage students through conversational teaching and when I'm including relevant pop cultural references. We often host Socratic seminars to discuss lessons and deepen understanding. Classroom management, I believe, is a joint effort between teacher and students, and all should be held accountable for maintaining it. I don't believe a school-wide classroom management practice would be beneficial because not every classroom is the same, just like not every student or situation is the same. Teachers should be allowed the freedom to do what is best for their classroom or their teaching style. If there are teachers who struggle, professional development should be offered to help those teachers. Now, I understand the PBIS and hall monitoring and things like that. That's great. But once they come into my classroom, I should be able to do what's best and what fits my own teaching style. As far as my own classroom management plan, I believe in teaching self-regulation, the ability to manage thoughts and emotions and behaviors in order to achieve a desired goal. If I'm able to teach my students that, that's self-control, that's accountability, that's invaluable not only in the classroom but in the real world. I also believe that creating successful K-12 learning communities, that there are 5 effective classroom management techniques that I actually got from Burden, a 2020 reference. The 5 techniques they have are creating and teaching expectations and rules, where the teacher provides explicit directions and instruction about the expectations for the students, which we've covered in the first 2 weeks. Establishing procedures and structure, certain processes that students carry out to successfully complete classroom events. That's my first 3 assignments. You come in, you read, you write your journal, you do your vocabulary. Reinforce expectations, which is strengthening students' adherence to the expectations and rules and procedures by using reinforcing strategies. This can be revisiting the rules and procedures, gentle reminders, and sometimes it may be firm reminders. Actively engaging students. When students are actively responding to tasks or content, they have less time to engage in problem behavior. That's why we do these Socratic seminars and we do the Kahoots and the quizzes and the classroom scavenger hunts. By them being so engaged in the content, before they know it, they look up, it's time for the bell to ring. Also, the last one is managing behavior. Effective management involves reinforcing appropriate behavior and using instances for misbehavior as opportunities to teach more appropriate conduct. I'm giving the students opportunities to correct their own behavior. I can do that with proximity, with nonverbal language, as well as with verbal language by just approaching them and letting them know, hey, that's not acceptable. Remember the social contract that you signed. Remember, we don't curse in class. We come to class prepared. By reinforcing these behaviors, I'm able to limit the misbehaving opportunities. As far as the classroom climate, I have an intentional classroom layout so the students can see the board and see me, and I can also walk and roam around my room. I often greet my students at the door, and I have a planned activity as soon as they enter the classroom, which is their 15 minutes of silence sustained reading. I also have enough work to fill the entire block and to keep the students engaged. Once again, the less time that they have to get off topic, the more they'll stay engaged and stay on topic. My classroom design, the way my class is set up is I've set up rows of desks, 3 rows of 5 on each side of my classroom, and 1 row of 5 that comes down the middle. It's just enough to support 35 students in my room. I have a bulletin board in the back of my classroom with relevant posters with parts of speech. They actually have like pronouns for when like certain slang terms that kids use, like pronouns, adverbs, interjections, verbs. An example is the verb yeet, like the kids when they used to say yeet. It shows that, hey, this is a verb that is a verb. It's what you do to be yeeted. Or spell the T. The T is a noun. It's the thing that we're going to be talking about. So it's relevant to the students and they can have fun with it. I also have a part of my bulletin board that is sectioned out to spotlight students who have A's and B's in the class, and I have a vocabulary wall for my elective class. The board is outlined with string lights, and I have a classroom library in the corner and a wall full of movie posters. You can kind of see it behind me with clapper boards and reels to bring relevance to my elective class, which is a film class. Uh, my students have expectations of me. Students should expect me to be on time and to be prepared and knowledgeable of what we are doing and what I am teaching. If I come in here unprepared, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. Students should also expect me to communicate with them so that they are aware of expectations and of any changes. Sometimes on one day, I may say one thing we're going to do, and then when we get to that day, I'm like, hey, we actually have to go back and retract. So if I'm transparent with them, they see that not only am I human, but I'm also trusting them to stay on task and to help me in this classroom management. I also have expectations of my students. I expect them to come to class ready and willing to learn and to work. I also expect the students to be respectful and communicate with me about any questions or needs. Uh, I present students with rules, regulations, and consequences at the beginning of the school year, and I have them sign that social contract so that if there are any infractions, students will be subject to those consequences that they've already agreed to. And those consequences will be increasing in severity based on the number of repeated offenses. This option clearly communicates expectations to students, and it's what they agree to at the beginning of the year to abide by these rules. As far as communication in my class, I use Remind Me or Remind.com to send a link of the social contract to parents to make sure everyone is aware. I have parents sign on a Google form to acknowledge that they're aware of the rules and procedures in the classroom. I send out emails to teachers when to parents, forgive me, when students are, falling behind in class. I try to keep them involved. Um, all parties, parents, students, teachers, school, everybody should work to ensure the success of the student. And it's not just limited to academic progress, but we want to create an all-around good citizen. See, I myself identify with Ron Clark. After learning of the Ron Clark story and learning about his school, I was ready. I was reminded of my why, and I was ready to pack up all my stuff and move to Georgia to apply for a job. His philosophy is a combination of Glasser and Jones, creating a community environment and allowing students to have some control over how they learn. I see myself implementing these theories with a bit of sagacity to balance the structure of the class environment with community, student learning, and empathetic accountability. Now, the Glasser model is something that focuses on building rapport with students and creating a community environment. I definitely try to do that, and I think it's extremely important. One way I try to build rapport with my students is by implementing culturally responsive techniques in teaching to build a caring environment. My students are coming from very difficult situations, and it's my responsibility to be sensitive to these things. It's my duty to challenge them also in a productive manner to encourage them to do the proper behavior and to be a diligent worker. Therefore, I work to balance Glasser and Sagati. All right, I try to focus on the roles and expectations of accountability and support. And by combining these two models, I can build a smooth and effective learning experience and build supportive relationships with my students at the same time. My approach to classroom management I think it's successful because I put the students first. It prioritizes the students' rights and needs to build a community environment that is beneficial for everyone. Students are made aware of class rules, procedures, and expectations, and they agree to them. Parents are included in the process and made aware of social contracts and the goals of the class. Students understand the consequences of violating the social contract. These practices and open communication make for clear understanding and an environment where questions are welcome. Each student feels protected as I, the teacher, build rapport and work to understand each child's individual circumstances and motivate that child to overcome any obstacles. I'm able to remind the students that they're not alone and to show them that I'm here. I'm here to understand and to support them in this classroom. When the rules aren't followed, students are held accountable. The same as when I don't meet expectations, I'm held accountable too. I'm quick to apologize for being wrong. There is a mutual understanding that everyone is working together to have a good and successful year of learning and growth. All the while, students are also being prepared for life outside of the classroom. I don't just focus on building straight A students, but I focus on being students as whole beings, as good citizens. Our classroom is a community that prepares the student for the real world that's beyond these walls and beyond the building. Through holding the students accountable to their behavior and learning and building rapport with them, teachers can accomplish a great feat. We can mold the future in a positive manner. We can encourage progress and change. That's our job, and it starts in the classroom. Thank you.